She called the cops when I took down my own lake pool. My HOA president neighbor dialed 9011, claiming I was destroying community property. I was just doing routine maintenance. The police arrived, checked my permits, and then something wild happened. I wasn't the one who got a warning. This woman thought weaponizing emergency services would steal my pool spot. Big mistake. She had no idea I'd document everything. What happened next became the most viral HOA drama of the year. If you've got crazy neighbor stories, especially from Florida, drop them below. The morning started perfectly, with that golden Florida sunshine that makes you forget hurricanes exist. I was in my swim trunks and my favorite "I paused my game to be here" t-shirt, live streaming the whole maintenance process to my mom up in Georgia. "See, Ma, just like Dad taught me, maintenance every 6 months keeps it lasting forever," I said, showing her how I was carefully disconnecting the LED strips from my floating paradise. The lake pool wasn't just some random platform. It was 15 feet by 15 feet of engineered perfection, complete with cup holders, a shade canopy, and a waterproof workstation where I could code while floating. As I lifted one corner to check the underside, I noticed something odd. "That's a new scratch. Better document this," I muttered, taking about 12 photos from different angles because, well, you never know when documentation might save your bacon. That's when I heard the distinctive click-clack of designer slides on our wooden dock, moving at a speed that meant only one thing: drama incoming. Trish Sterling power walked toward me in a pink sundress that probably cost more than my monthly HOA fees, her white sun hat flapping like a surrender flag she'd never wave. Her face was already red, and she was clutching her pearl necklace like it was a lifeline to sanity. "What are you doing to our lake?" she shrieked, causing a flock of birds to abandon their morning fishing. I stayed calm, something I'd learned from years of dealing with difficult clients in IT. "Scheduled maintenance, Trish. Here's the permit, the HOA approval letter dated 3 weeks ago, and the insurance documentation. Would you like copies?" But she wasn't listening. Her phone was already pressed to her ear, and I could hear her speaking in that fake panic voice she'd perfected. 911, emergency! There's a man destroying the lake property. He's putting chemicals in the water. Send someone immediately." I set down my tools and waited, knowing from experience that getting worked up would only make things worse. My mom was still on the live stream, and I could hear her laughing. "That woman's crazier than a bag of cats," she said, which made me smile despite the situation. About 7 minutes later, yes, I timed it, Officer Marcus Daniels pulled up in his patrol car. The moment he stepped out and saw Trish, his whole body language changed. It was the slump of a man who dealt with this particular brand of crazy one too many times. "Mrs. Sterling," he sighed, not even trying to hide his exhaustion. "We meet again. 4th time in 2 months. He walked over to me first, professional but clearly annoyed at being there. "Sir, I need to see your documentation for this lake pool." I handed over my folder. Yes, I keep a folder specifically for pool paperwork, and watched as he flipped through it. This is impressively thorough. Permits, insurance, HOA approval, and even water quality test results. You're 100% legal here. Trish's face went from red to purple faster than a sunset. "Arrest him! He's lowering property values. This is destruction of community property," she screamed, her voice hitting octaves that made dogs bark 3 houses down. Officer Daniels turned to her with the patience of a saint dealing with his last sinner. "Ma'am, maintaining private property is not a crime. However, let's discuss your recent 911 call." He pulled out his notepad, and I swear Trish's fake tan paled. "June 15th, you called about barking dogs that turned out to be cats. July 3rd, a suspicious package that was an Amazon delivery. August 10th, noise complaint about wind chimes. And now, September 2nd, legal maintenance work." He closed his notepad with a snap that sounded like Judgment Day. "Mrs. Sterling, this constitutes criminal misuse of emergency services. This is your official warning. Next time, it's a $500 fine. The time after that, arrest." The silence that followed was beautiful. Trish stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "This is discrimination. I'll have your badge. I'm on the HOA board. My daddy is a judge," she sputtered, wobbling dangerously in her designer slides. Officer Daniels just nodded slowly. "Ma'am, your father being a judge doesn't give you the right to abuse emergency services. Have a nice day." As he walked back to his car, he paused near me and lowered his voice. "Between you and me, She's done this to 3 previous pool owners. They all moved within 6 months. He gave me a meaningful look. You might want to document everything. With that ominous warning, he drove off, leaving Trish standing on my dock like a flamingo having an existential crisis. I turned my camera back to my mom, who'd watched the whole thing with the fascination of someone binge-watching their favorite show. "Did you see that, Ma? She called the cops on me and got warned herself." My mom's laughter filled the air. "That woman's got more issues than National Geographic, baby. You better listen to that officer and keep documenting." From her balcony next door, I could see Ellie Rodriguez, our 67-year-old retired lawyer turned HOA drama chronicler, holding up her iPad and giving me a thumbs up. She called out, "Honey, that's just episode 1. Trust me, I've seen this pattern before." Trish heard this and spun around so fast she nearly fell into the lake. "You're all conspiring against me. This pool spot was meant for something special. You'll see. That pool spot will be mine." She stormed off, but not before her heel caught on a board. She recovered with surprising grace, but the damage to her dignity was done. As I watched her retreat, still muttering about property values and conspiracies, I couldn't shake Officer Daniels' warning. 3 previous pool owners all moved within 6 months. What exactly was Trish Sterling's endgame? And why was she so obsessed with this particular spot on Lake Serenity? I was about to find out that this was just the opening act of the wildest HOA drama our neighborhood had ever seen. The next morning hit me like a digital tsunami. My phone started buzzing at 6:47 a.m., and when I checked, I had 73 emails from Trish Sterling. 73! The subject lines read like a descent into madness. Concern about lake safety, then urgent pool hazard, escalating to legal action imminent, and finally, my personal favorite, terroristic threats to property values. I sat up in bed, rubbing my eyes, wondering if this was some bizarre dream. But no, each email was CC'd to the entire HOA board, the mayor's office, and somehow the governor of Florida. I forwarded the entire mess to Ellie with a simple eye roll emoji, and her reply came back faster than Trish's mental breakdown. Per HOA bylaw 3.2.5, pool maintenance is the owner's right. Also, Trish, honey, spell check exists. It's therefore not therefore. Coffee was definitely needed for this level of crazy, so I headed to Sunnyside Cafe, my laptop in tow, to get some actual work done. I'd barely settled in with my large cold brew when the bell above the door chimed and in walked Trish in what I can only describe as her serious business costume. She wore a black pantsuit that looked like she'd raided a community theater's wardrobe, complete with fake reading glasses and a clipboard that still had the Dollar Tree price tag on it. She pretended not to see me, which was impressive considering I was the only customer there. "I'm conducting an official investigation into dangerous pool installations," she announced to the teenage barista, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. "Very official, very legal. Do you know anything about unauthorized lake modifications?" The barista blinked slowly. "Ma'am, this is a coffee shop. Would you like to order something?" As Trish fumbled through her fake investigation, my phone buzzed with a text from Brandon Foster, my neighbor who rented from Trish. The attachment made me nearly spit out my coffee. It was security footage from Trish's own driveway, time-stamped at 5 a.m. this morning. The video showed Trish in her bathrobe, standing in front of her car's side mirror, practicing crying. She had a timer on her phone and everything. "My children could have died," she wailed at her reflection, then checked the timer. No, needs more tears. Try again. She actually had printouts spread on her car hood. I zoomed in and could barely make out "How to Cry on Command," WikiHow at the top of one page. Brandon's text read, "Bro, your neighbor is practicing. This is insane." I saved that video immediately, adding it to my growing Trish Files folder. The emergency HOA meeting that evening was called for 7 p.m. at the clubhouse, which meant Trish had pestered President Tony into action. I arrived to find her in outfit number 3 of the day, a navy blazer with a badge that said Safety Inspector in Comic Sans font. She'd prepared a PowerPoint presentation with 73 slides, matching her email count, which couldn't be a coincidence. The title slide read, "Death Pools, a Silent Killer," in that same Comic Sans font, complete with clip art of skulls and crossbones. By slide 35, which featured a photo of me with poorly drawn devil horns, half the room was either asleep or trying not to laugh. "As you can see," Trish said, clicking through slides of completely normal lake pools from around Florida, "these floating death traps are everywhere. They're lowering our property values. They're attracting criminals. They're perfectly legal," I interrupted, standing up with my trusty rolling suitcase of documentation. The suitcase hitting the table got everyone's attention. "I have here permits dating back to 2019. annual inspection reports, insurance documentation, water quality tests, and environmental impact studies. I also have signed approval from the HOA board, including, I paused for dramatic effect, pulling out a printed email, this message from Trish last year. Would you like me to read it? The room went silent. I cleared my throat. Dear Ryan, your pool is gorgeous. Best addition to our lake. It really classes up the neighborhood. XOXO Trish. The sound of 30 people trying not to laugh at once was like a symphony. Trish's face went through several color changes before settling on volcanic red. That was before I knew about the dangers, she sputtered. Treasurer Jim cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses in a way that meant drama was coming. While we're sharing documents, Trish, we need to discuss your HOA fees. You owe $1,800 from 6 months ago. Per our bylaws, members with delinquent accounts cannot vote on community matters. The room got so quiet you could hear the air conditioning struggling. Trish's mouth opened and closed several times before she managed, I paid that. The check cleared. Jim pulled out his laptop, turning it so everyone could see. Yes, a check cleared to Trish's Party Planning LLC, not to the HOA. You paid yourself instead of your fees. The murmur that went through the room was like waves on our lake, steady and unstoppable. That's when Brandon Foster stood up and I could see his hands shaking slightly. I have something to share, he said, his voice cracking like a teenager's. Mrs. Sterling offered me 3 months of free rent if I opposed the pool at this meeting, but this is wrong. I have the text messages. He held up his phone, showing a text that read, Help mommy get that pool spot, Brandon. Free rent equals happy tenant. The emojis really sold the crazy. More texts followed. That pool is in my spot. And 20 years ago, that's where it happened. The room erupted in chaos. Someone yelled, What happened 20 years ago? Another person shouted, This is insane. Trish tried to restore order by banging her clipboard on the podium, but the Dollar Tree quality meant it just bent sadly. The vote to ban lake pools was almost anticlimactic after all that drama. 4 people voted yes, all members of Trish's wine club who probably owed her favors. 31 voted no, including Jim, who made a point of saying his vote loudly. Trish's meltdown was spectacular. You're all jealous of my vision. You don't understand what that spot means. None of you understand. She stormed toward the exit, but her heel chose that moment to snap completely off. She had to do this weird hobbling run to the door, her dignity leaving faster than her broken shoe could carry her. This isn't over, she screamed as the door closed behind her. Later that night, I was reviewing my security camera footage when I caught something chilling. At 3 a.m., Trish was at my pool spot with a measuring tape, taking photos and writing notes. She was on the phone, and the camera's audio picked up her words clearly. Daddy, I need the nuclear option. Yes, the same thing we did in Miami. She then pulled out an old photo from her purse, kissed it, and whispered to herself, 20 years ago, right here. Richard proposed right here. I'll show him what he threw away. I'll show that Pilates instructor who the real Mrs. Sterling is. The plot, as they say, was thickening faster than Florida humidity. Tuesday morning arrived with a van that looked like it had been decorated by a 5-year-old with unlimited access to vinyl letters. Bob's Pools, Spas, and Now Lakes was plastered on the side in at least 4 different fonts, and I'm pretty sure the ampersand was backward. Bob Sterling himself emerged wearing a suit jacket over swim trunks and rain boots, carrying a clipboard that still had the Dollar Tree barcode sticker on it. His certification was laminated, which might have been impressive if the lamination wasn't peeling and the certificate wasn't clearly printed on home computer paper. Trish stood beside him in what I can only describe as a Halloween scientist costume, a lab coat with Lake Safety Supervisor embroidered in glitter thread. This is our expert witness, she announced to the small crowd of neighbors who'd gathered to watch the morning entertainment. Bob approached the lake like he'd never seen water before, which, considering he was from Nebraska, might have been partially true. Is this the ocean? He asked, genuinely confused. Trish's eye twitched. No, Bob, it's a lake. We discussed this in the car for 45 minutes. Bob consulted his phone, squinting at what was clearly a Wikipedia page. Ah, yes, lakes are bodies of water that are wet. He pointed at some perfectly normal algae on a dock post. Toxic waste. Then a family of ducks swam by. Contaminated wildlife. Then finally at my pool equipment on the shore. Floating death trap. The ducks seemed offended and swam away, quacking indignantly. Mrs. Patterson from 2 houses down shouted, "Those are Carl and Patricia. They've lived here for 10 years. Bob wrote something on his clipboard, then turned it accidentally toward us. He'd just drawn a frowny face. Ellie had set up on her balcony with full live streaming equipment, narrating the scene like a nature documentary. And here we see the rare Nebraska lake expert in his unnatural habitat, confused and disoriented, she said into her camera. Notice how he's holding the clipboard upside down. The comments on her stream were flowing faster than I could read, but I caught, "Is he Googling, 'What is the lake?' and 'Dollar Tree called, they want their clipboard back.'" Someone in the growing crowd shouted, "Bob, have you ever actually seen a lake before?" Bob looked confused. "I have an above-ground pool in Omaha." Trish was turning redder by the second. "He's an expert. Tell them about your certification, Bob." Bob proudly held up his laminated paper. "I got certified online. It only took 20 minutes and $49.99. The entire crowd burst into laughter. The inspection descended into pure comedy when Bob tried to test the water with what looked like a pregnancy test strip. "I'm checking for dangerous levels of," he squinted at his phone again, "hydrogen dioxide?" Someone yelled, "That's water, Bob, H2O. Bob nodded sagely. "Exactly. Very dangerous. Can cause drowning." At this point, even Trish looked like she wanted to push Bob into the lake. The final straw came when Bob confused our lake with a golf course water hazard. "Nice fairway," he commented, pointing at the water. "Where's the 18th hole?" Trish grabbed his arm. "Bob, focus!" But it was too late. Ellie had already found Bob's LinkedIn profile and was sharing it with the crowd. "Says here Bob's been unemployed for 3 years and his last job was at a mini golf place. That explains the fairway comment." Bob practically ran to his van, shouting over his shoulder, "I have another lake to inspect, very busy, very professional." As his van peeled out, one of the vinyl letters fell off, so it now read, "Bob's Poos, Spas, and Now Lakes." Trish stood in my driveway, screaming at the retreating van. "You had one job, Bob, one job!" The neighbors were all recording, sharing, and texting. Jim commented, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Dollar Tree clipboard was a nice touch, Trish. Really sold the expertise." Someone else added, "Hey Trish, my cousin's a rocket scientist. Want him to inspect your brain?" But the joke that really got her was when old George called out, "My goldfish knows more about lakes than Bob." Trish spun around, her lab coat billowing dramatically. "You're all jealous of my initiative. At least I'm trying to protect our property values." "From what?" Ellie called down. "Ryan's perfectly legal, properly permitted, fully insured pool?" Trish had no answer for that. Later that afternoon, Kevin Martinez showed up at my door looking uncomfortable. Kevin had been the neighborhood handyman for 5 years, trapped in some exclusive contract Trish had convinced half the residents to sign. "Hey man," he said, shuffling his feet, "I need to tell you something. Mrs. Sterling offered to clear my $3,000 debt if I made your pool unusable. She even gave me $100 as a down payment." He pulled out a crumpled bill. "But here's the thing, I'm not going to do it. That's destruction of property, and I'm not catching a charge for anyone, especially not for someone who owes me $3,000. He handed me a note he'd written. "I was thinking I'd leave this for you tonight, make it look like I came by. But also, I want to install some cameras around your pool area, free of charge. Consider it community service." The note read, "She wants me to break your pool. I said no, but she might find someone else. Kevin. P.S. She still owes me $3,000. P.P.S. Installing cameras at your pool tonight, free of charge." I shook Kevin's hand gratefully. "Thanks, man. This is getting crazy." Kevin laughed bitterly. "You want to know crazy? She once asked me to paint her grass green for a party. When I refused, she tried to pay me in essential oils. As Kevin installed the cameras that evening, Brandon Foster came by with another recording. This one was a game changer. It was Trish on the phone, pacing in her backyard. "I need that spot. It's where Richard proposed 20 years ago. The party has to be there." Her voice cracked with emotion. "He'll see what he lost. That young floozy he married won't compare to the party I throw." Then, the real kicker, 20 years of marriage thrown away for a pilot's instructor. But when he sees the golden anniversary party I throw at our spot, he'll remember what real class looks like. So that was it. This wasn't about property values or safety. This was about a woman trying to recapture a moment from 20 years ago, trying to prove something to an ex-husband who'd moved on. It was almost sad if she wasn't making my life miserable in the process. That night, Kevin's new cameras caught something interesting. Trish approached my pool equipment at 2 a.m., but she wasn't alone. Another figure in matching black clothes was with her, and they were carrying something heavy. "Daddy's lawyer friends gave me this," Trish whispered. The camera zoomed automatically. Kevin had installed some seriously good equipment and caught what they were carrying. It was a huge sign reading, "Condemned by Florida Lake Authority" in neon pink letters. The font, Comic Sans, of course. The other person stepped into the light, and I nearly choked on my coffee. It was a 72-year-old woman in a full ninja outfit. Tress called her mom. Martha Sterling, dressed like she was about to rob a bank, helped her daughter attempt to post a fake condemnation notice on my pool. This family drama was getting generational, and somehow I was stuck in the middle of it. The next morning, I woke up to find a neon pink sign plastered on my pool equipment that looked like a unicorn had thrown up on it. "Condemned by Florida Lake Authority Supreme Court," it declared in Comic Sans font, because apparently that was Trish's signature style. The misspellings were almost artistic: eminent domain for public safety and lake contamination detected. I took about 30 photos from different angles, laughing at each new spelling error I discovered. The official signature at the bottom was just a squiggly line that looked suspiciously like someone had let a toddler loose with a crayon. Even better, the seal was clearly a gold star sticker from an elementary school teacher's supply kit. I peeled the sign off carefully, preserving it for what I was starting to think of as my evidence museum. An hour later, my doorbell rang with the urgency of someone who thought they were important. There stood Trish in what I can only describe as a dollar store judge costume. Black robe that was clearly a graduation gown, a plastic gavel from a Halloween store, and a powdered wig that looked like it had seen better days sometime in the 80s. "I am here to deliver legal documentation," she announced, thrusting an envelope at me like it was a weapon. Inside was the most hilariously bad cease and desist letter I'd ever seen. "Law Offices of Sterling and Associates" and "Sons" was emblazoned across the top in word art that screamed 1995. The address was listed as 123 Legal Street, Lawsuit City, Florida. The letter threatened $1 million for emotional pool damage and warned that I had 48 hours to comply or face the wrath of justice. The spelling of 40 alone made me smile. My lawyer friend from college, Marcus, nearly choked on his coffee when I sent him photos of the letter. "This is criminally bad," he texted back. "And I mean that literally. Impersonating a lawyer is a felony. Send me everything." Within 2 hours, Trish was receiving a real cease and desist letter, properly formatted and spell-checked, with a CC to the Florida Bar Association regarding illegal practice of law. The process server found her at her weekly wine club meeting, which meant she opened it in front of 12 of her friends. According to Brandon, who heard it from his girlfriend who worked at the wine bar, Trish's shriek of "What do you mean, felony?" could be heard from the parking lot. The other wine club members suddenly remembered urgent appointments and scattered like startled pigeons. Meanwhile, Treasurer Jim had been inspired by all the drama to dig deeper into the HOA finances. What he found was a masterpiece of terrible embezzlement. Over 6 months, Trish had used the HOA credit card for lake beautification that coincidentally matched her party planning dates. $400 at Party City became aquatic safety equipment. $300 at Wine and Spirits was logged as community meeting supplies. The crown jewel was $250 at a spa, which she'd tried to categorize as stress relief for HOA board members. The receipts told the real story. Happy 50th, Trish balloons, glitter cannons, and deluxe mani-pedi package. Jim compiled everything into a presentation that would make forensic accountants weep with joy. The total was $3,200 of HOA funds used for Trish's personal parties. The emergency board meeting that evening was standing room only. President Tony looked like he'd aged 5 years in 5 hours. "Trish, we need to discuss these charges," he said, sliding the receipt copies across the table. Trish showed up in outfit number 6, a CFO power suit with a fake MBA pin from what looked like a cereal box. "Those were community investments," she insisted, her voice reaching that pitch that made dogs nervous. "Glitter cannons improve property values." Jim, God bless him, maintained his composure as he responded. "This receipt literally says, 'Happy 50th, Trish,' in purple frosting. That's not a community investment." The room erupted when he showed the spa receipt. "How exactly does your deluxe mani-pedi help our lake maintenance?" Someone in the back shouted. "Maybe she needed nice nails to point at Ryan's pool." That's when Kevin arrived like an avenging angel of receipts. He carried a folder thick enough to use as a weapon and the satisfied look of someone about to get paid. "She owes me $3,000 from 3 separate parties," he announced, laying out invoices like playing cards. The 4th of July party, the Labor Day bash, and something called Trish's Revenge Gala. He pulled out his phone. He promised to clear my debt if I sabotaged Ryan's pool. I have texts, voice recordings, even a payment schedule she drew up on a napkin. The napkin was passed around, and yes, it really did say break pool equals debt cleared with little hearts drawn around it. Kevin's final evidence was a voice recording of Trish saying, "Just make it look like an accident, like the last 3 times. The room went silent at that. The last 3 times? Brandon chose that moment to go live on his streaming platform, and within minutes, Storytime, My Landlord is Pool Trish, was trending. He shared everything, the recordings, the texts, the bribery attempts, but the real bombshell was his revelation about previous tenants. She raised rent on one guy for having the wrong plants. Not dead plants, not ugly plants, the wrong shade of green. He showed lease agreements with increasingly insane clauses. Curtains must be eggshell, not cream. Doormats must face north. Cars must be washed every Sunday at 3 p.m. The stream hit 100,000 viewers in 30 minutes, with comments flowing so fast they looked like a digital waterfall. "This is insane. Someone check on her. Florida woman strikes again." Just when we thought it couldn't get wilder, someone recognized Martha Sterling in the ninja outfit footage. Ellie, ever the researcher, gasped. "Martha Sterling? She was involved in the Miami HOA scandal of 2010. The mother-daughter duo got 3 HOAs dissolved." It turned out the Sterling women had a reputation across Florida for HOA terrorism. They'd been banned from communities in Miami, Tampa, and Officer Daniel showed up during the meeting, taking one look at the evidence spread across the conference table. "This is embezzlement," he said simply. "Also, false legal documents are criminal. Mrs. Sterling, you might want to get a real lawyer." Trish's response was to rip off her wig, and yes, she'd been wearing a wig over her real hair, and scream, "Daddy, code red, bring the big guns." She video called Richard Sterling right there in the meeting, and we could all hear him say, "I'm coming with the mayor. Nobody messes with my princess." But Ellie was already grinning at her phone. "Oh, honey," she said, showing us a text from her friend at City Hall. "The mayor saw the viral videos. He tweeted, 'Lake pools are great. Hashtag Team Ryan. Your daddy's about to get a surprise.'" Richard Sterling's Bentley rolled into our neighborhood like a funeral procession for common sense. The license plate read JDJ1, which was both pretentious and technically incorrect since he was retired. He emerged wearing a $5,000 suit that probably cost more than most people's cars, his Rolex catching the morning sun like a tiny disco ball of entitlement. Trish stood beside the car in what I can only describe as outfit number 7, a full princess ball gown, complete with a tiara, at 10 in the morning, on a Thursday, for a confrontation about a lake pool. "Daddy's here to fix everything, princess," Richard announced, stepping confidently out of his car and directly into a mud puddle that had formed from our sprinkler system. The sound his Gucci loafers made, a sort of expensive squelch, was poetry. His face went through several expressions before settling on forced dignity as muddy water seeped into Italian leather. "Young man," he said, approaching me with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no, "I've crushed bigger than you in court. You're going to remove that pool and apologize to my daughter." I stayed calm, something I'd gotten good at over the past few weeks. "Sir, welcome to Serenity Shores. I'm Ryan Thompson, and I'm happy to show you all my permits and documentation." He waved dismissively, mud still dripping from his shoe. "I don't think you understand who I am." I couldn't help myself. A retired judge currently under federal tax investigation? His face went pale under his golf course tan. "How did you—" "Sir, you're literally trending on Twitter right now. Hashtag Sterling tax scandal." The look of horror that crossed his face was better than Christmas morning. That's when Mayor Rodriguez pulled up in his Prius, and the plot twist was beautiful. He was wearing a bright blue t-shirt that read, "Lake Pools Rock," with a cartoon pool float on it. "Dick Sterling," he called out cheerfully. "Heard you were visiting our lovely community." Richard's confidence visibly deflated like a punctured pool float. "Tom, I didn't expect to see you here," he managed. The mayor walked right past him to shake my hand. "Ryan, wanted to thank you personally for beautifying our lakes. Mind if I get a selfie with your pool in the background? Great for my environmental initiative campaign." As we posed for the photo, Trish was hyperventilating into a paper bag that had apparently materialized from her ball gown. The mayor's photographer took multiple shots while Richard stood there looking like someone had just told him his country club membership was revoked. "Dick Sterling!" Ellie's voice rang out from her balcony, where she'd set up what looked like a broadcasting station. "Remember me? Eleanor Rodriguez. I beat you in the Williams case." Richard's face went from pale to ashen. And the Thompson scandal. Oh, and that Medicare fraud thing you tried to defend. Each case name hit like a physical blow. You said you retired, Richard said weakly. From law, Ellie grinned, not from ending bullies. How's that tax investigation going, by the way? Richard started stammering about statute of limitations when Trish grabbed his arm. Daddy, just make them stop. And that's when Richard Sterling, in his desperation to save face, let the truth slip out like water through a broken dam. This party could save her reputation, he blurted. After Miami banned her for calling 911 on the yacht club gala, and Tampa banned her for the country club incident, and Orlando, Daddy! Trish shrieked, her tiara sliding sideways. But it was too late. The crowd that had gathered was recording everything on their phones. Someone shouted, How many cities have banned you, Trish? Another voice added, Is there a Florida HOA Hall of Shame? The homeowners were treating this like a live comedy show, and honestly, they weren't wrong. Martha Sterling chose that moment to arrive in a golf cart decorated with fake flowers, wearing her own tiara. Don't worry, sweetie, Mommy's here. The Sterling family was now complete. 3 generations of HOA terrorists in increasingly ridiculous outfits. Brandon was live streaming the whole circus, and I could see his viewer count on his phone screen, 200,000 and climbing. OMG, family, you are not ready for this, he was saying. Fountain Karen is about to blow. Sure enough, Trish caught sight of herself on Brandon's phone screen, seeing the comments flowing past. Turn it off, she screamed, starting toward Brandon in her ball gown and heels. What happened next became the most viral moment in HOA history. Trish's heel caught in her dress hem. She windmilled her arms, trying to catch her balance. Her tiara flew off like a sparkly frisbee, and then, in perfect slow-motion karma, she fell backwards, directly into our decorative fountain. The one the HOA had installed last year, the one she'd voted for. The splash was magnificent, sending water cascading over the edges like a discount Bellagio show. But here's the beautiful part. She was still wearing her wireless mic from the HOA meeting, and it was waterproof, so everyone on Brandon's stream could hear her underwater screaming, I'll sue, glub, 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 everyone, glub, glub. She emerged like an angry mermaid, her ball gown now weighing approximately 800 pounds, mascara giving her raccoon eyes that would make actual raccoons jealous. Her wig, because yes, she'd been wearing a wig over another wig, floated past like a dejected sea creature. The clip was everywhere within 5 minutes. Someone had already added the Titanic theme song. Another version had submarine sound effects. When you fight lake pools and lose became an instant meme template. In the midst of all this chaos, I found myself sitting on a bench with Ellie, suddenly exhausted. I'm so tired of this, I admitted, the weight of weeks of drama hitting me. Some days I just want to give up and move. I called my mom right there, not caring who heard. Ma, maybe I should just find another place. This is too much. My mom's voice was firm through the phone speaker. Baby, your daddy never backed down from bullies, and neither will you. You document everything and stand tall, you hear me? I nodded, feeling tears prick my eyes. Yes, ma'am. Ellie patted my shoulder. She's right, you know. Bullies count on wearing you down. Don't give her the satisfaction. I took a deep breath, finding my second wind. I could do this. I had to do this. That's when Trish, still dripping fountain water and wearing her sodden ball gown, decided to make her final mistake. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911. I've been assaulted, attempted drowning. Send everyone! Officer Daniels, who'd been watching from his patrol car the entire time, slowly got out with the exhausted movements of a man who'd seen too much. Ma'am, I watched you trip. Also, you're currently being live-streamed to... He glanced at Brandon's phone. 250,000 people who also saw you trip. Trish's face went through several emotions before settling on desperation. That's strike 3, Mrs. Sterling. You're under arrest for misuse of emergency services. The visual of Trish being handcuffed in a soaking wet ball gown, tiara askew, mascara making her look like a very fancy panda, was almost too perfect. Daddy, do something, she wailed. Richard Sterling looked at his daughter, then at the crowd, then at the mayor, who was still wearing his Lake Pools Rock shirt, and made a decision that surprised no one. I don't know this woman, he said clearly, walking back to his Bentley with as much dignity as a man with muddy Gucci's could muster. He drove away without looking back, leaving Martha Sterling standing there with her mouth open and her own tiara drooping. As Daniels helped Trish into the patrol car, Kevin started playing Under Pressure by Queen from his phone, and the entire crowd began singing along. It was beautiful in its absurdity. But Trish had one more card to play. As the patrol car door closed, she called out to Daniels. Fine, but I already filed the papers. What papers? Liens on everyone who voted against me. My mom's a notary. We filed them yesterday. Daniel sighed. Ma'am, filing false liens is also a crime. Are you kidding me? Trish's scream could be heard even through the closed car windows. The radio in Daniel's car crackled to life. All units, we have a situation at City Hall. Something about fraudulent liens? And just like that, the Sterling family's day got even worse. Trish Sterling's mugshot broke the internet faster than her heel broke in that fountain. The booking photo showed her with mascara streaks creating perfect symmetrical patterns down her cheeks, her tiara tangled in what remained of her wet hair, and an expression that screamed, "I demand to speak to the manager of jail." Within hours, it became the most used meme template in Florida history. When you call 911 but get arrested appeared on everything from coffee mugs to billboards. Someone even made a Wikipedia page for Lake Pool Trish that had to be locked after too many edits. The local news ran with Florida woman calls police on neighbor, gets arrested instead, and the story went national by dinner time. My personal favorite was the remix someone made of her underwater gurgles set to techno music. It had 10 million views by midnight. The legal consequences came down like dominoes in an earthquake. First, the misuse of 911 charges, $1,500 in fines plus court costs. Then the false liens issue exploded when investigators discovered she'd filed 31 fraudulent liens against her neighbors, each carrying potential felony charges. The cherry on this disaster Sunday was Martha Sterling, her 72-year-old mother, getting arrested for notary fraud when security footage showed her stamping documents while wearing her ninja outfit from the other night. Martha's mugshot, featuring her own crooked tiara and an expression of bewildered entitlement, joined her daughters in the Hall of Fame of bad decisions. The investigation into the HOA embezzlement revealed $3,200 in stolen funds, with receipts going back 2 years. The final tally facing Trish was over $10,000 in fines and possible jail time. The speed at which vendors abandoned Trish's birthday party was almost comical. Party Perfect Catering sent a single text: "We don't work with felons." The DJ company was more creative. "Sorry, our equipment is allergic to fraud." The tent rental place claimed all their tents had suddenly developed holes. But the best response came from the balloon artist, who simply sent a photo of a balloon animal that looked like handcuffs. Kevin, watching the vendor exodus from his truck, couldn't stop laughing. 3 years she owed me money. 3 years of next party, I promise. This is better than payment. He'd started a group chat for all of Trish's unpaid vendors, and the total debt was staggering, nearly $20,000 across 15 different businesses. The chat was named Trish's Debt Dynasty and had its own emoji, a crying money bag. The emergency HOA vote to remove Trish from the board was the fastest in Serenity Shore's history. 67 homeowners showed up, which was a record, and the vote was 66-1. Trish, participating via video call from jail, voted for herself while wearing orange instead of pink for the first time in anyone's memory. "Orange is not my color," she kept interrupting until the judge muted her. Ellie's election as the new president was unanimous, and her first motion was to protect lake pools as a fundamental property right. Her second motion was to implement the Sterling rule. Anyone who misused 911 more than 3 times would be banned from HOA positions for life. The room erupted in applause, and Jim, the treasurer, actually did a little dance. Despite everything, I couldn't help feeling a tiny bit bad for the innocent people who'd been invited to Trish's party. So I offered the community space by the lake for anyone who still wanted to celebrate. They didn't do anything wrong, I explained to the board. They just had the misfortune of knowing Trish. Several guests took me up on the offer, and their thank you cards were revealing. One elderly lady wrote, "We only came to her parties for the drama anyway. The food was always terrible, and she never had enough chairs." Another admitted, "I've been pretending to be busy for 3 years to avoid her parties. This arrest is the best gift she's ever given me." The most honest came from her former wine club. "We've been looking for an excuse to kick her out since 2019. Thanks." Brandon's influencer career exploded like Trish in that fountain. His channel jumped from 50,000 to 300,000 subscribers overnight, and brands started reaching out. His Document Everything merchandise line sold out in 6 hours, with the Fountain Trish Memorial Splash t-shirt becoming an instant classic. He moved out of Trish's rental property and into a nice apartment with, as he proudly showed in his tour video, an actual lake view where I can document everything. Plot twist, he started dating Jim's daughter, Sarah, whom he'd met during one of the HOA meetings. Their first date was to the courthouse to watch Trish's arraignment, which was either deeply romantic or deeply weird, depending on your perspective. Ellie's documentary, The Lake Pool Files, became the most watched HOA content in YouTube history. It hit 15 million views in its first week, with revenue going to a legal aid fund for HOA abuse victims. The documentary featured interviews with 20-plus people Trisha terrorized over the years, revealing a pattern of behavior that spanned 15 years and 4 cities. My favorite interview was with a man from Tampa who said, "She called 911 on my garden gnomes, said they were looking at her suspiciously. The gnomes were suspicious." The documentary won 3 amateur filmmaker awards and got Ellie a development deal for a series called HOA Horror Stories. She celebrated by installing another Ring camera and declaring, "Season 2 is going to be lit." The community threw a spontaneous celebration that night at the lake. My pool, now decorated with solar lights and floating LED lilies, became the centerpiece of the party. Kevin DJ'd for free, opening with Celebration by Kool and the Gang and playing every water-themed song he could find. Officer Daniels showed up off-duty with his family, raising a beer and declaring, "First quiet month in years. Here's to lake pools and legal permits." Even the mayor attended, still wearing his Lake Pools Rock shirt, which he claimed was his new favorite. He gave a brief speech about property rights and responsible citizenship, though most people were too busy doing the Fountain Trish splash dance move that had somehow become a thing. The courthouse comedy continued when Trish appeared for her arraignment via video link. Still in orange, and still complaining about it, she tried to demand a jury of homeowners and insisted the fountain attacked her first. Her lawyer, a public defender who looked like he'd drawn the short straw, kept muting her microphone. The judge, clearly trying not to laugh, set bail and condition. But the real shock came when Martha Sterling, trying to get a lighter sentence, completely flipped on her daughter. "She's been doing this since 2008, Martha announced to the courtroom. "I have records, receipts, everything." Trish's scream of "Mother, you traitor," could be heard even through the muted microphone. Martha's response was simply, "I'm 72, I want to see 73 without bars." The prosecutor actually applauded. The final tally of consequences was impressive. Trish received 6 months in jail, 3 years of probation, and fines totaling $15,000. She was banned from all HOA positions for life and ordered to complete 500 hours of community service. The judge, with what I swear was a smirk, assigned her to lake maintenance duty under Kevin's supervision. "Missed a spot, Trish," became Kevin's favorite phrase. She also had to wear a vest during service that read, "I misused emergency services," in reflective letters. The court ordered therapy for what the psychologist termed HOA addiction disorder, was the cherry on top. As Trish was led away, she called out one last time, "This isn't over, you'll all pay." The bailiff's response of, "Ma'am, you literally already are paying," was perfect. 6 months later, Lake Serenity had become something of a tourist destination. My lake pool, now upgraded to version 2.0, featured solar panels that could power a small village, LED lights synchronized to music, Bluetooth speakers, and cup holders that could fit everything from coffee mugs to wine bottles. The crown jewel was a custom sign that read, "No soliciting. Yes, Trish, this means you," in elegant script, a gift from the neighbors who'd chipped in to have it made. Every Thursday I hosted floating office hours, where remote workers from around the neighborhood would bring their laptops and work while literally floating on the lake. It had become so popular that people were asking about property values in our area, specifically to join what the local paper called Florida's most famous lake pool community. Trisha's release day arrived with all the fanfare of a circus coming to town. She emerged from county jail wearing an ankle monitor that clashed horribly with her attempted pink ensemble, and a t-shirt that read, "I survived jail," apparently a gift from her cellmates who'd gotten tired of her complaining. Her community service assignment was pure poetic justice. Lake maintenance under Kevin's supervision. Watching her in a bright orange vest that read, "I called 911 falsely while scooping algae with a pool net," was better than any reality TV show. Kevin had embraced his role as supervisor with enthusiasm, setting up a speaker system to play Under Pressure on repeat. "Missed a spot, Trish," became his catchphrase, which he delivered with the timing of a professional comedian. She also had to attend court-ordered therapy for what the psychologist officially diagnosed as HOA addiction disorder, which was apparently becoming a recognized condition in Florida. Moving day at the former Sterling residence was a spectacle worthy of selling tickets. The foreclosure sale to pay her legal fees meant everything had to go, and the moving truck that showed up had someone write Felon Express underneath in washable marker. Trish tried to salvage some dignity by claiming various lawn decorations as personal property. Officer Daniels, who'd apparently taken to following Trish's community service as a hobby, happened to be driving by. "Ma'am, those flamingos were purchased with HOA funds. They're community property." "I bought those with my own money," Trish shrieked, clutching a plastic flamingo like a life preserver. "According to receipt number 473, you used the HOA credit card," Jim called out from his driveway, waving a folder. "Put the flamingo down, Trish." The irony of the neighborhood throwing their party on Trish's originally planned birthday date was lost on no one. The Serenity Shores Freedom Festival featured my lake pool as the centerpiece, decorated with lights that spelled out "Justice Floats" in LED brilliance. Kevin DJ'd the entire event for free, opening with Celebration and working through what he called his Vindication playlist. When he played Freefall, as Trish walked by doing her community service, the entire party stopped to applaud. The party featured a fountain jumping contest into a proper pool with safety equipment, a Document Everything booth where people could laminate their important papers, and a silent auction where someone actually bid $50 on a printed screenshot of Trish's fountain fall. The surprise appearance of Richard Sterling, the ex-husband, not the disgraced father, added another layer to the drama. He showed up in a Tesla with his new wife, who couldn't have been older than 30. "I heard about the party disaster," he said to anyone who would listen. "I tried to warn her father years ago that Trish needed help, but nobody listened." His young wife, Brittany with 2 T's as she made sure everyone knew, couldn't stop complimenting my lake pool. "Oh my God, this is like so much better than our infinity pool in Miami." When Richard donated $1,000 to the HOA's legal fund to help with all of Trish's damage, she threw her net down and screamed into the lake, sending birds into panicked flight. The editorial Richard Sr. published in the Miami Herald under the title "I Have No Daughter" was brutal in its honesty. He detailed years of embarrassment, failed interventions, and enabling that had led to this moment. He announced he was donating $100,000 to establish the Victims of HOA Fraud Fund and cutting all ties with Trish. The paper accidentally printed a retraction the next day, saying, "We have a daughter," due to a spell check error, which somehow made it even worse. Trish saw the article during her mandatory break, and her wail of "Daddy, how could you?" echoed across the lake. My video call with my mom that evening was the first truly peaceful one in months. "We did it, Ma," I said, showing her the view of the lake where 5 lake pools now floated in harmony. "Your daddy would be so proud," she said, wiping tears from her eyes. "Standing up to bullies with paperwork and patience. That's the Thompson way." The stress of the past months had melted away like ice in Florida sunshine. Ellie's presidential legacy at the HOA was already becoming legendary. The newsletter, now titled "Drama-Free Since Trish Left," featured actual useful information instead of threats. She'd implemented the Ryan Thompson rule, which protected all lake installations that met safety standards, and the Trish Sterling clause, which allowed lifetime bans for serious violations. Other HOAs were adopting our rules. Trish had inadvertently created legal precedent for protecting homeowner rights. The new neighbors who bought Trish's house at a significant discount were delightful. Martha and Harold Pemberton arrived and immediately asked, "Is this the famous Lake Pool Street?" I handed them my prepared packet, permits, insurance information, maintenance schedules, and a laminated card that just said "Document Everything" in bold letters. As if on cue, Trish trudged by with her wheelbarrow. "Is that?" Martha asked. "Yep," I confirmed. "But don't worry, she's got 400 hours of community service left." On her final day of service, Trish approached me at the lake. "I wanted to apologize," she said quietly. "I lost everything over a party venue. My marriage, my reputation, my freedom, my relationship with my parents." I studied her for a moment. "I hope you learned something from all this." She attempted a weak smile. "Document everything." I couldn't help but laugh. "That, and don't weaponize 911. The community barbecue that evening was perfect. I floated on my lake pool with my laptop, showing a simple "case closed, forever" screensaver. Ellie floated by, joking, "Ready for season 2? Martha Pemberton called out from the shore, "Those boats are such eyesores, we should ban them." The entire party went silent before Martha burst out laughing. "Just kidding, I love boats. But seriously, can someone teach me about permits?" And that's how one woman's obsession with a lake pool spot led to the most viral HOA drama in Florida history. She called the cops on me for maintaining my pool and ended up with a mugshot, a criminal record, and a fountain diving meme that will live forever. Remember, folks, 911 is for emergencies, not HOA drama. Document everything. The truth always floats to the surface.